Hello, everyone. It's currently Sunday, March 27th, 2011, and this is Day 9 Daily number 276, where we learn to be a better gamer. There was some testing going on before the daily began, and as we found out, my chair might need to be oiled. So that's fine. It means I can use it for all sorts of effects in this show while talking about Cruncher, who, in fact, if any of you have been following his recent tournament performance, is just blasting through the field. He is so good. I watch his play and I'm just like, really, there's something special about Cruncher's play. He really has taken a lot of the Protoss standards and just done them a lot more solidly, or just started to do a lot of his own sorts of things very, very well. So I'm very excited to do a little bit of a look at our good friend Cruncher, who in the recent FX Open... Okay, do this. Well, I guess... I wanted you to cover your ears so you wouldn't hear, but instead I was just like, do this! This is what you should do to maintain spoiler freedom. And everyone was just like, Sean, you... So the important thing to note, though, is that Cole, Cruncher, has some good stuff going on. So we will be going into that in just a minute. Did want to state that the next Fun Day Monday is going to be tomorrow, because Monday oftentimes follows Sunday. So the Fun Day Monday for the week has 3 constraints. 1, you must start a nuclear missile before you begin a command center. 2, you must nuke at least 3 times in the game. 3, you must say a line from Dr. Zeus upon every nuke. It can be made up, it can be real, it just has to be Dr. Zeus-esque. That is all that you have to do. For next week's Newbie Tuesday, I would love it if you submitted a game where you tried to do some infestor-heavy play, either rushing for infestors, incorporating infestors in the mid-game, and we're going to see all about how you can stay alive, how your economy functions when you do that, and most importantly, how the rest of your strategy plugs into that. Those are the key things. I don't think there's anything else noteworthy except for the fact that Thursday and Sunday next week there will be no live show, because I will be at Major League Gaming's Dallas, Texas event. So go to mlgpro.com to see me casting with the Wheat and the JP, pow, 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 or just go to Dallas and see me there. So I want to come back to the idea of our good friend Cruncher, who I do believe has a pretty interesting history in that he came to Warcraft 3 kind of late. So he was one of those people who was really on the upswing as Warcraft 3 was on the Hindenburging. It was kind of taking a Titanic-style maneuver through the esports world. It actually wasn't. It was just kind of petering off. So, I kind of like the fact that Cruncher was getting really into Warcraft 3 scene as it was diminishing, because that's one of those signs of, oh my goodness, he just really wants to be good at this game. There's a lot of people, actually a surprising number of people, for any of you who have not been involved in the history of esports, who like to ride the new game wave. And what do I mean by that? Well, many companies, I mean, not just recently. Recently there's been an explosion of, even school teachers in PTA meetings going, esports. But I mean, through, I would say, the 1999 to 2009 era, there were companies that would come out with a game and go to major tournaments and say, please include our game, please. Or even tournament organizations just grabbing a new game and saying, we're going to put this in our tournament. I hope to God it's a good game. In other words, games that had zero competitive community built around them. Tournaments were artificially created to try to support this. So there are these players who'd be like, what's the game of the week? And it would be some generic first-person shooter like Kill Death Blaster in the Face 15. And be like, yeah, I'm going to play that. And everyone had the abbreviation for it, the KBDOF championships. And that always kind of irked me, because there were players who were scooping in like $80K a year just winning tournaments for games you've never heard of. But Cruncher, no. He did not succumb to the fate of these sorts of players. Just really grabbed onto Warcraft 3 as it incidentally was not performing as well in the esports scene. And now that he's transitioned to SC2, you can always check out his stream on TL.net. And in particular, his performance in recent tournaments has been amazing. So we today are going to take an examination of one of his games from the FX Open. Cover your ears, cover your eyes, turn the stream off if you do not want spoilers. We're going to be spoiling pretty much any tournament that has happened in the last week, including the TSL, the FX Open, and a number of other things, just because I want to be able to talk about him. It's Sunday, March 27th, 2011. Anything from March 20th to March 27th, I'm going to spoil. So close this daily if you don't know the results. All right, you've been warned. Here come the spoilers. Cruncher wrecked Idra 2-1 today, and Idra and Cruncher had a wonderful little bit of trash talk exchange, but Cruncher really did just straight up outplay Idra in 2 of the games. Hence his win 2-1. Idra wrecked Cruncher in the game that Cruncher lost. However, oh my gosh, Cruncher managed to have these really cool styles of play in the other 2 games that were very, very different. And then, that very day, I learned that Cruncher had also crushed through, I believe it was Inca, Marine King Prime, aka Foxer, and Czech Prime in the FX Open. We're going to look at the Czech Prime games. So just to give you an impression of the style of awesomeness that we're dealing with, we're going to pop right into this. We have Kirchi, who incidentally is Czech. And then we have One Cruncher is in the bottom left. And we're going to be looking at 2 games from this series. And the reason that I'm going to be doing this one is that there's a very common little tendency with players, which is whenever you see a result like Cruncher performing very well or something like that, you go, hey, I want to be like Cruncher. And the news I have for you is you can be just like him. Don't you worry about it. I got you covered, man. So the important thing is to be able to lift strategies up out from underneath our Protoss buddy. So we are seeing the usual sort of pylon placement go down first. Okay, that's good. That's great. As usual, in a game, we always want to say what is an overall strategy that we're going to be doing. And one of the main things that I always suggest is looking at the third base. How does the third base influence the play? So let's just do a very simple example. Let's consider Shakura's Plateau. Shakura's Plateau has 3 really easy bases to take. You have your main, your natural, and then that back door, either the 12 o'clock expansion or the 6 o'clock expansion. Ha-ha! That's why a lot of players love to go the Colossus Void Ray things, because 3 bases, in other words, 3 sets of gas is easy. What about some maps where a third gas is not so easy to get? Let's consider some ones where what's a little bit harder of a third gas. The immediate ones are some of the maps that have been thrown out, so I'll go ahead and use those. Blistering Sands. Holy shit, that's impossible. Holy check, it is hard to get a third gas on that map. Like, really, really hard. So I actually don't like doing Colossus Void Ray style plays on that map at all, really. We always want to have that sort of coloring in our goggles whenever we're thinking about a gameplay. So I would not mind any sort of long-term focus play, hence why I do not necessarily mind this so much. Also, the size of the map is quite big. And this is where you begin to question what openings would work well. And I want you to think about what your general mid-game idea was. So for me, I'm just going to say, you know what, Colossus Void Ray on 3 base, that's pretty easy because, you know, I have a pretty small set of area to defend. Let me give that a shot. So with my opening, what would be good on a map like this? I don't know, opening air. Yeah, I like air a lot because, 1... it helps me with the long distances. That's me considering the map. But then 2, I considered my overall mid-game strategy, Void Ray Colossus, and that flows very well into it. Hold on, I'm really, really thirsty. Please, enjoy Czech Prime's base while I drink this nectar. That was fantastic. So we do see somewhat of a risky play by Cruncher, the man that we want to focus on, who is, again, going for a 15 Nexus. Now, it's always important to begin to note timings. When this Nexus, or actually, let's just go ahead and not do too much rewinding since we do want to watch 2 games. When this Forge ends up getting thrown down, we know that if he's going for some sort of hatch pool gas opening that all of his stuff was at about 30%. Nothing too far along. However, we're seeing a gateway get thrown down right away. Why is that? Because he hasn't freaking scouted him yet, dude. And there he scouts it. So the instant that this happens, where you end up getting into the base, you should do reverse timings. This is a concept that I've always sort of danced around, but never actually said explicitly. If your opponent is, how do I put this? If your opponent is doing a build order that you have all the timings for, you can say things like, all right, let's do some of these timings right here. You can say something like, right when my gateway starts, my Zerg opponent's gas geyser will have just finished. Again, assuming that he is going hatch, pool, gas. When I say reverse timing, I just mean you look at his timing and then you conclude what it is that he's doing. So, for instance, because we're going to get here and we're going to say something like, oh yeah, my gateway is at like, 25%. Let's actually do this. So we are Cruncher. We're advancing forward. We're going to reverse timing this. Okay. Since my forge is almost done, and his pool is almost done as well, they're actually about the same thing, then I can conclude that he went hatch, pool, gas. This is especially important to be able to do this in terms of timings whenever there's some sort of hiding going on, and especially in the late stages of the game. Where interestingly, you might not think that you can do these sorts of timings. In the early game, it's very obvious. People will say, yeah, okay, the gateway is going to finish at about the same time as the pool. Or the forge is going to finish at about the same time as the pool. Like, righto. But I want you to begin trying to note some later game timings where, wow, whenever he begins to get Void Ray, you can, or if you see a Void Ray come out at time blah, you can immediately conclude something like, yeah, Colossus not going to come up for X number of minutes. Or huge attack not going to come out for X number of minutes. Using the timing that you know to make a gigantic conclusion about what he can and can't do, or in particular, about what exactly he is doing. So the usual style where we get our photon cannon. And just one thing to note, what if that pool was already finished and there were Zerglings coming this way? We would build a gateway here, and then when this first gateway finished, the second gateway here, we would cancel and replace it with a cybernetics core. Very fun little simple technique. See some assimilators going down. And here comes a very interesting point in the decision making for a Protoss hero. What the hell do you do now? This is generally where I would say 99% of your gold, platinum Protosses begin to crumble. They end up not having this probe find anything particularly useful. I mean, everyone's going to scout a fast hatch. Or everyone's going to scout a fast pool. Everyone will be able to scout that first obvious thing, but not that many people will be able to make the correct judgments off it. So in particular, oh no, one Cruncher's probe is doomed. Let's briefly take a step back to obviousness land. In obviousness land, it is so freaking obvious that he is going for a cybernetics core, and obvious that he's going for a probes. But let's do the non-obvious stuff. Oh no, he ended up dying as he saw Zergling speed and gas being mined. Very little ends up being revealed at that point. And oh, what a true delight. We are seeing one Cruncher unleash a similar style to what we saw him do against none other than Idra himself, Stargate. Just like to reiterate for any of you tuning in late, this is not a spoiler-free cache. You're going to learn all sorts of horrendous stuff, such as what actually happened in those Idra games, because it's important to have those points of comparison for our learning. There's one Cruncher picking off this Stalker. There he is, taking it out. This is actually so important, I'm going to pause it. This is so important, I'm going to pause it. You guys, look, let's have a little powwow here. My knuckles didn't crack with meaning as I had intended, but that's fine. I can crack my neck with meaning. Let's have a powwow, guys. It's important that you understand the following. It is great if you can look at one of a great player's games, his builds, his replays, and understand exactly why he does the things that he does. However, there's nothing wrong with having no clue why he does what he does and just copying it. This is so true for silver level players who, maybe your mechanics are starting to become a little more stable, but you start to feel uncomfortable in games. I want you to think, all of you, even if there's some master leaguers, even if you, Huck, are watching right now, Monsieur Loranger, I want you to remember a time where you just felt scared in games. Like when you go into a game and you start to build up a huge army, and you get that, I don't know when to attack. You'd be like, oh, God, okay. You move out to attack, you'd be like, God, I hope this works. And you get crushed, and you'd be like, oh, no, oh, damn it, shit. And you get that horrible crush, and you're like, no one needs to know. No one needs to know. And then in the next game, you're like, I want to attack, but I don't want to feel terrible anymore. Right? I remember those times where I would just be like, this is a great way to combat that. Steal, exactly. Just be like, well, one cruncher attacked at the blah minute mark. I will now attack at the blah minute mark in the exact way. Let him make the decisions for you. And sure, you can end up using your brain. I would not suggest that you should become a mindless robot, because robots are not very good at video games. He said in a phrase that would be referred to 10 years later in a Hollywood true story. But there's nothing wrong with saying something like, well, why did he go for a stalker instead of a sentry first? I would tell you because it's a great way to clear out overlords so that they, for instance, do not spot your Stargates. However, there's nothing wrong with just sort of kind of blindly doing it. Now, here is the part where I'm going to go into one cruncher cam. As I would like to briefly note, there's some banelings somewhere here. They're getting morphed. Oh. Wow, those are hidden. Holy crap! Can you not see those? Is that as hard for you as it is for me? Let me just see if I can get around here. Is there any way to spot these things? Can we, zoom in here? Now maybe kinda. Oh, my. I was going to do the chair leany backy squeaky thing, but I locked it. I can't lean back. I joke blocked myself. How tragic. But man, those are hard to see. I will remember that for future games. But anyways, Cruncher doesn't know. This is one of the most important parts of any game where you are not allowed to scout your opponent. Too often, what players do is they think about what would be the most fortunate thing in the world, and then they try to force the fortunate thing to work. As they say, jamming the square rod into the circle hole. Which just sounds a little too suggestive for me, but that's fine. I want that metaphor to just be very potent and poignant for you. A lot of times what players will do is say, I can't scout him, and they will try to force scouting to happen by hiding 3 probes about the map. It's really so essential that you build comfort with this style of play. So what you would do is you would say something like, if we go to the Kirchi cam, aka the Czech Prime cam, not a lot of drones, right? Very fast baneling nest. So what we would say in terms of one cruncher land, we would say something like, right when my void ray is at, let's say, 50%, that's when I need to begin worrying about banelings. Right when my void rate is around 50%, that's when I need to worry about banelings. As we see in the Everyman cam, that's right when about the banelings are beginning to pop out. And hey, it looks like we can even adjust this timing. I said when it was halfway done, that's when we'd worry about banelings. But how about right when it's about to be finished, right? When it's about to be finished. I think that's a pretty good time to say, right when that void ray is about to be done, that's when our scary time doth occurreth. So here's the breakdown moment. Here's the breakdown moment where, oh, by the way, that's so almost awesome. Oh, but in reality, that just sucks ass. He got his front broken. So here's the difference between your lower level Protoss's line of thought and your really ultra high level Protoss's line of thought. The low level Protoss's line of thought, and I'm even including some diamond level players in this as well, that will say something like, If I open Void Ray, then I guess I can harass him if he's macroing, and I can defend if he's banelinging, because he can't shoot up. I could even maybe defend if he's roaching. So I like this opening. In one case, it's offensive, in the case where my Zerg buddy's trying to macro. In these other two cases, it's defenses, where my Zerg buddy can't shoot up. And then they stop. That's their box, where they're working in. This is the problem with that. It doesn't take into account timings. This is the sort of thing I would note. This Void Ray popped out right as all this stuff was happening. What a top-level Master League player will say is he will say, right when my Void Ray comes out, if I haven't been attacked by banelings or roaches yet, then I definitively conclude, using my reverse timing, that he's going for some long-term play. So that means I can make all sorts of extra shortcuts. It's not just Void Ray good at early expand, Void Ray good at killing roach. Right? That's my caveman impersonation. It's a little extra. Void Ray plus defense if he's starting to blast at me, but Void Ray plus really cutting corners if I don't see anything. If this bust did not happen, I would immediately begin cutting corners if I were one cruncher. Perhaps maybe trying to squeeze in an extra upgrade. Perhaps trying to chrono boost probes instead of other things. And I think Czech makes a grave error. And it ends up trying to sit and hang out and do a little bit of attack in action. So let's see how one cruncher doth defend it. Looks like he is going to end up losing that pylon, bringing the probes out into the 4A. And at a point like this, it's important that you not forget the core idea of your build. This is a point where timings start to feel a little hazy when they really shouldn't feel quite so hazy. You can use this timer to state a lot of things. Like that Baneling bust, that's a pretty typical Baneling bust. And if we look over at Terran, alright, cool. Looks like we have some queens popping out. Now, I want you to begin doing some logic with me. I want you to begin engaging in a wonderful exercise of logic. We just had something mildly crazy occur. Let's go to the one cruncher cam, and then let's end up looking back at our opponent for a little bit of a check. What a funny play on words, because that is check playing. Alright, I want you to consider some of the following. I'll even refer to the fine live folks who are saying some things. Consider some of the following. What if we get to the Zerg's base and we see 4 queens? We don't get anything else, but we see 4 queens. What can we conclude? I would conclude that, man, he probably has a delayed layer. He might not even have a layer started. Completely logical thing to conclude. What if we get there and we see a ton of drones? I'd also be like, yeah, probably no layer, but definitely not a lot of attacking units coming. What if I did see a layer? I'd probably be like, oh yeah, not a lot of attacking units. What if I saw a ton of attacking units at the front and I still hadn't even got to his base? Then I would probably conclude that probably not a lot of drones, probably not a lot of layer. All these sorts of things, right? It's really, really important to be able to do these sorts of reverse things, right? Very, very, very important to be able to do some of the reverse analysis. And of course, a lot of fine folk in the chat are screaming, what if he has all 3? Then he's hacking! Very good, then we would get him banned. And anytime you write banned, I want you to write it like that. B, shift 7, Pam. Ampersand band. So, I mean, at a moment like this, yeah, you know what? Okay, we see this sort of thing. Hitting anything he can. He hasn't managed to scout all the way up here, but he's going to begin seeing a lot of queens on there. And per usual, just sort of re-walling off the front. We'll likely pick off one of those gateways at some point. Nothing wrong with just whipping around and beginning to target fire a Baneling to see if you can end up picking it off. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now, I just want to note a general structure. Here's a basic idea where you break away from the traditional method of measuring builds order and just go for order. What did we see? We saw getting these 3 buildings, the Cybernetics Core, the Warp Gate, and the Forge, and then what did he do? He got a Stargate. And then what did he do? He got a Robo Facility. And then what did he do? He got a frick ton of Warp Gates. He didn't get all the warp gates first, and then get the robotics facility. He got the robotics facility after the Stargate, and then he got these things. Just copy that. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, I don't know. I'm a silver level player, but if I just copy it, then whoa, I will be in a world of happiness and health and prosperity. We can even, by the way, with this sort of scout timing, we can begin to conclude other things like, whoa, hey, that extractor, ordinarily a Zerg would have 4 extractors by now, so I guess his layer is probably still not quite finished yet. You can begin to conclude things like that. Oh, and by the way, if he had 4 gases and no layer, then he's just bad, and that's great. That's great news. But again, a lot of gases suggest that he's doing some sort of tech, so you should be able to do these sorts of pinning your opponent on what he is doing without actually having to scout exactly what he's doing. Just because, again, by the laws of logic, he cannot do everything at the same time. He can only do some things at certain points in time. He can only ever do limited sets of things, and now you're starting to see why this Void Ray Harass is so profoundly kick-ass. Now, here's a very interesting moment in time, I would suggest. Let me just back up a moment. So, okay. I'm going to tell you right now that one cruncher, and I'm going to remove the production tab, one cruncher is going to kill off all the queens. One cruncher is going to kill off all the queens. What does this definitively mean? You type in chat. Talk amongst yourselves. Or if you're just watching this in the archives, think about it. I didn't just ask that, and I was so blown away at my own question that I was like, I've made myself speechless. Day 9, you are too good. I said my statement, I was just like, What does that definitively mean? Well, I would say it means a couple of things. Let's consult the good old Shadowruha and see what exactly they are ending up saying. Right? Let's see. Thaniri says if he has no more queens, his production will be cut and he will have no anti-air. The ad larva, yes, definitely. Now, all the stuff is perfect. Yeah. It means you can lift the eggs. Thanks, Night Train. A lot of people are just noting, the great standard, like, okay, it means that you won't have creep spread, all this stuff. Now what I want you to do, I want everyone in the chat to restate everything from the obvious stuff. Stop saying the literal stuff that he won't be able to do, but conceptually, I want you to go one more step. Okay, so he can't add extra larvae right now. So one more step, what does that mean? That is the important thing. So you've been like, well, he won. It means that, oh my gosh. Yeah, see, I like this play. Milky Zerg says Cruncher can play greedy. That's a great point. He can play greedy. Why? Because if my opponent has no units to produce, then it means he can't put any pressure back on me. Right? That seems great. I mean, a lot of people are saying that he's vulnerable. Yes, there's another great comment. He's very vulnerable to being attacked right now. Those are the two important ideas to take away. That he's vulnerable right now because he can't produce, and he's unable to put pressure on me right now because he can't produce. I don't want to hear things like, he's dead, he's lost. Unless you're trying to be lulzish, unless you're treating the good old StarCraft experience like you're at a sports bar, like, oh, well, he's screwed, bro, with your bro drink and bashing the other drink with your bros and stuff. That's fine. But if you want to play and you want to steal this style, we need to be able to conclude things like, hey, he cannot put pressure on us because he is going to have to be worried about re-stabilizing in terms of production. So as we can see, he's in absolutely atrocious shape. Now, one thing to note is that Cold Cruncher is just suddenly adding on 4 gateways, right? So he's going to have 8 freaking gateways. There's 4 up there and 4 up there. He literally just, in his mind, is saying, okay. He's saying, okay, I did it. I'm the man. But there was a combo of things that caused him to do that. The whole Zergling Baneling bust at the start immediately meant that our Zerg was limited in options. He couldn't make a big army and begin to go for a big economy and stay alive against all this air garbage and tech. And then upon killing off that second wave, Cruncher basically said, okay, because I held off your push, and then because I did a bunch of damage with this harass, now I can go in for a kill. Now, here's the funny thing that ends up happening is that, what if you end up trying to be like Cole Cruncher, you do this style of play, and then you do this Void Ray Phoenix harass, it does a lot of damage, and then you attack, and you lose. You might go, well, let me think about that. And then you would go, oh, that's right. My opponent didn't try to Baneling bust me at the start of the game. And sometimes this can feel very amorphous, right? Because you're like, well, okay, if I hold off a Baneling bust and then I kill 4 queens, then now I know. But how do I apply this to other situations? Sometimes what's fun to do is to just assign a number to how bad of a blunder it was. Don't overcomplicate this. Just label it as like 1 blunder or half a blunder, right? Like, so if, for instance, you killed off 2 queens, you'd be like, oh, that's about like half a blunder. If you killed off like 4 queens and some drones, that's a freaking blunder. I don't actually do the half. I just do it in terms of huge 1 units. So if he does a huge attack early on and he fails, I'm going to count that as 1. If I do a huge amount of harassment and it actually does damage, all right, I'm going to count it as 2. And then you can say something like, anytime I'm ever up like 2 blunders, I'm just going to make 8 gateways and go kill him. That's pretty darn easy, right? That's a pretty nice way to quantize. And this, honestly, is what a lot of pros end up doing. Not honestly, they don't have their notebook, their Hello Kitty notebook, and they're like, ooh, time to tick a blunder on there. But they have these shortcuts in their head where they're like, okay, if he does a roach play or just some other attack around now and I hold it, and then I do a little bit of damage, I've won. But to make it really easier, just keep your blunder counter. Yeah. So maybe you kill 6 overlords, and you're like, that sucks for him. Check. And then you kill off an expansion and a bunch of units that try to keep it alive. Check. Oh, hey, I'm up 2-0. I'm making gateways and going for the kill. It's a pretty cool, easy, straightforward way to do junk. The important thing, Cole Cruncher-wise, that I want you to grab from this game is, hey, he goes for Void Ray. We did a little bit of timing. And then he goes for Robo. And then he goes for lots of gateways. This is similar to what Ace did at the Intel Extreme Masters Championship. And this little bit of extra sauce is the result of being up 2 blunders, or in other words, being up such an extraordinary amount that it was clearly time to snap a neck and run. Let's go ahead and take a look at Game 2. Now, let's relate Game 2 back to Game 1 using our same little logic as before. Here's Kirchi, aka Check Prime, and then down here is Divan Cruncher, yeah. Okay, what strategy seems reasonable for one Cruncher to do? In the previous game, what did we say? We said the map is Taldarim Altar. And I know it's Altar, but Altar sounds way cooler. On Taldarim Altar, we have an easy third base. Let's relate our basic strategy to our third base and how easy it is to get, how hard it is to get, what resources are there. And in that game, it was a full base with 2 gas geysers. I'm just going to go Void Ray Colossus and play a little bit defensively. That is what we were going to do. But on this base, this might actually be a little bit harder because, hey, you know, these third bases, these can be a little bit tricky to hold off. I might have to make some more gateways before I end up pushing out. I might not be able to go as heavy in the air tech front. My personal preference on this map is to actually just go for a big gateway push. And by the way, in terms of crowdsourcing, if anyone knows how to ever fix this, like to make it show only one person's thing, I would be delighted to know. I looked for that for like 30 minutes. I kept like stopping in the middle of the Team Liquid Star League and ignoring what Wheat was saying. Just like, how do I just turn off one of these players' doohickeys? So we're going to see one Cruncher get the gateway at his ramp. Okay, great. We're going to see him get his gas geyser. Okay, superb. He's going to end up doing a little bit of mining harass. Okay, stupendous. And for any of you who don't know what the mine harass is, you just mine a little bit, stop. Mine a little bit, stop. Mine a little bit, stop. And then all the drones will focus on all the patches except this one because it's already being mined from. So you limit him to 7 patches early on. I'm going to do not as much discussion of timing, not as much discussion of timing in this game, because I want to try to relate it back to this idea of the overarching strategies. There is the cybernetics core going down. Again, we can note things like when the cybernetics core goes down, that is around the time when Zerg has enough money to take an expansion. So if we don't see an expansion, we can use our reverse timing to conclude that some sort of all-in is coming. Pow! These are the essentials of timing. Drawing conclusions and making gigantic sweeping assumptions that seem impossible but are actually possible with the power of logic and thinking. So we're seeing Kirchi shoot out a little bit of Jurglings. Now this is just freaking annoying. Man, that is just douchey. He's going to end up taking it out, and I actually think he has enough space to start it, but no, I was wrong. He is starting the hatchery right now. And there's the good old speed upgrade coming out right now. And this is one thing that is kind of cool about doing what Cruncher did. It's very, very easy to get right back on track again. I guarantee you what's going to happen is he's going to get 2 more gateways and just continue on in a zealot sentrying fashion with an expo. Almost certainly he'll be favoring the sentries by a bagrillion light years. Nothing too extraordinary to note, except little things like when does his speed end, when do I need to worry about that, when do his queens pop out, when do these larvae pop off. You can do all this sort of good stuff by just watching great players' replays and writing down time. Hey, when he goes for a 14 pool, it looks like he will end up adding larvae at around the 5-minute mark. Oh, that's so useful, because then if I attack at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, then I know he will have not had that little pop-off of doohickeys. And by doohickeys, I do mean larvae. Good. Interestingly, we are seeing a Stargate pop down. And oh, there's the Stalker there to join. Will he end up seeing anything? It looks like he will see a gateway. Did we see anything more? I missed a couple of times. Nope. Didn't end up seeing much of anything. And again, we're going to see, oh, looks like some airplay come out from Cruncher. And this is the part where things always get a little interesting because, let's think about the way that this relates back to the last map. So in the last map, we ended up getting Void Rays and all that goody goodness and the early expand, and that was cool. But on this map, you heard me say beforehand, it's kind of hard to get a third base. I would favor more gateway units, favor more mobile stuff. In this game, we're seeing 2 gateways and a Stargate out. In the last game, the second gateway was started after the Colossi. Cool, cool. We can easily see that in this game, there's more favoritism towards just having extra units early on. And there is the Void Ray popping out as anticipated. And we, of course, want to have our happy, fancy time sense of timing. And look at already the amazing manipulations that one Cruncher is doing. This is the importance of having generalized build orders. Most builds for this matchup go Warp Gate, Cybernetics Core, and then a Gateway, and then another Gateway. We see one Cruncher go Warp Gate, and then a Cybernetics Core, and then a Gateway, and then a Stargate. So we can see the Zerg preparing for some sort of Warp Gate push. We see him preparing for this Warp Gate push. But then, holy cow, a Void Ray pops out at just the wrong time. And Cruncher's going to begin gearing up for an expansion. And we do see a second Void Ray pop out right now. And because I love drawing connections between things, we're going to try to think as much as we possibly can as to how Cruncher's play this game relates to Cruncher's play last game. Because if you can connect a player's mindset across games, then you can suddenly not just steal his build, but steal the way he thinks, and then suddenly you don't need to worry about copying things blindly anymore. You can just use the tools of his brain to your advantage. So it looks like, once again, a big reason why we end up getting these Void Rays early on is that it is a great way to harass queens at a time when there's really not that much else anti-air-wise. So we see the 2 Void Rays try to do a little bit of poking damage. But hey, here's I'm going to think hard before I say this sentence. Now we can state a similarity in thinking between these 2 games. There we go. That was a tough one to say. In general, if you get 1, maybe 2 Void Rays, that's great, but they're much better when you just churn out some Phoenixes. So what you need to do, and why is this the case? Because the Phoenixes lift the queens up. A queen is a beefy bitch, and she can handle the beating and lay on the hurt with her long-range little... I don't even know what they are, but she thumps them really, really far. They're very good anti-air, but you'll have like 4 queens, and that will be a formidable anti-air defense. But that means that it only takes 4 lifts of Phoenixes to completely nullify all those. So Phoenix plus Void Ray, very good at queen killing. If we're like 12 minutes into the game, he already has a layer, we don't want to go Void Ray Phoenix because, hey, you know what? The harassment will not work as well. So in this particular game, we just are going to rush for the Void Rays and the Phoenixes, because by rushing for it, we know, hey, he really can't have a layer up. This thing actually just finished. Let me even hit the back button. We'll see that this layer is just like 15, 20 seconds out. There it is. Yep, see, like, if we just rush for these Void Rays to pop out, we can easily exploit the fact that there's just not that many queens. How does this relate back to the Baneling game? Last game. Well, if he tries to do some sort of crazy, huge-ass bust, then we know the only anti-air that he can do is queens. So that's another motivation to begin getting the Phoenixes after he ends up getting all of those... it's motivation to get the Phoenixes after he ends up getting all those units killed off at the front. What if last game we didn't see a bust and our opponent fast-teched? We might just not make that many Phoenixes. In both these games, there was no risk of Hydras, no risk of Mutas being out. So that is why suddenly this bolstering of Phoenixes to help out with our queens is available. Notice this. No Phoenix really being made. And then when he gets here and sees 2 queens. Oh my gosh, did you see how instantaneous that timing was? In the last game, when the Banelings were held off, he knew that only queens would be there, and Phoenix Queen is great. Excuse me, Phoenix Void Ray is great against queens. Alright, so look at this. Here's the Void Ray. Look at the production tab. He sees 2 queens in production. Bam! Phoenix starts. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Oh my goodness, an only queen defense. I have an erection as one cruncher, and I satisfy that by constructing Phoenixes. It's a very cool, very interesting transition. Fantastic. Now, I'm going to actually ignore the fact that there are destructible rocks here. That is a tactical play. Oh, rocks! I can charge my Void Ray on there! I say that contemptuously. I want you to ignore tactics. I want you to ignore things like, in this 30-second period, I can do fancy thing, brr. I want you to think strategically. The strategic mindset is he is making lots of queens that can exploit that with Void Ray Phoenix. The tactical thing is, if I charge here, I can kill things faster here. Think beyond that. Think beyond the tactic, because I want to leave you with that tool set so you can use it on other maps. So we see him target firing drones. Why drones instead of those queens? Well, you know what? The Phoenix is not there yet. So notice the Phoenix popping in here, seeing the progress on the Hydrals Den, might see that and say, oh, I need another Phoenix now. But it looks like just one for the time being. Whoops. Ends up losing it. Heel sad. But hey, I'm seeing a robo facility come down. How do I relate this back to the previous game? Once air begins to really take effect, I'm going to go for a robo facility. And notice also that he saw the Hydralisk Den. Another great motivation to go for this robo facility very, very early on. But in general, strategically, when we get a bunch of air out, we're just going to go straight for the Colossi. Yeah, that is exactly what we are seeing as a theme from One Cruncher. Once the air kicks into gear, I'm going to go for Colossi. These 2 gateways at the start, yeah, they were fine and dandy, but we're going to stop making out of them the moment we can so we can go for this robotics facility, especially once our air kicks in. Yeah! So even though One Cruncher is essentially playing a different opening on a different map with different concerns, there's the same underlying logic of these air units, the Void Ray and the Phoenix, are going to help me pin back my opponent, put him on the back foot, make him feel defensive, keep him quivering with Frightenhood. And then we're going to get our Colossi nice and quick and happy and fast. And now it looks like we're going to see 3 gate units, 1 Robo Colossi, and then 1 Stargate Phoenix. which is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of it. You end up with like a nah-ish Colossus Ball. But considering the fact that we're seeing one Cruncher poke around here with his units, notice that this Void Ray is scouting positions that are a little easier to retreat from because he's retreating on his side. The faster Phoenix is scouting the scarier things like this base up here. I would not want to scout this with a Void Ray because if it turns out he had Hydros there, he can easily cut me off here or here. Whereas that's not so easy if I'm over here. Gateways going down, per usual. One Cruncher getting Mo Gateways up as he begins to get more Colossi out. There's the Chrono Boost on the ground weapons. There's the pylons going down. All's pretty well and normal in the world. And we're seeing our Zerg buddy Kirchi begin to slowly break out of his shell. Now here is something that you might not think is a big timing. Well, the third base, right? Ugh, my neck is just so stiff today. The third base timing, I think, is the key for pretty much all strategy in StarCraft 2. As well as StarCraft. And I was really good at that game, so boy do I trust my opinion on that. In StarCraft 2, everything really revolves around the third base timing, so knowing when those get started and when those kick into gear is really, 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 really important. Here's a flaw. Here's the wrong way to think. Well, sometimes I'll do damage to him with my Phoenixes and Void Rays and kill him. Sometimes I won't do any damage, and sometimes he goes for Roaches and then for Hydras. Sometimes he goes for Hydras and then Roaches. You know what? If you're one Cruncher, actually, let's just not even pretend you're one Cruncher. Let's just say you're a Protoss who wants to be like him, and you open up 2 Gateway, 1 Stargate. I want you to save 10 games of you doing that, and then I want you to write down when Zergs took their third. I don't even care based on the strategy. Just write down when he took his third and the strategy he did. Just write down the time and link it to the strategy. Don't overthink it. Just write these 2 things down. You'll be shocked to find out that a lot of the times that the third is taken is in a narrow strip of time. There might be some outliers like, oh yeah, he messed up a Baneling bust, or oh man, he's hacking, so he just had infinity minerals. You'll find these outliers, and then you can really start to go, oh, well, I guess in general, it's fine if I am in this position where I'm not doing any scouting and can't see a thing because I know about now is when he's starting that third. At like the 12-minute mark, let's say that's when you ended up making that discovery. Or what you'll notice is that half your games he takes it at the 12-minute mark, and half your games he takes it at the 8-minute mark. What I'm saying is, StarCraft feels like there are tons of possibilities, and it might be too difficult to predict everything, but there are points of convergence, and that's what you're looking for. Because every time you get to a point of convergence where everything is about the same, you can always seek comfort in that and know that you can begin playing a little bit blind from that point on. This is one of the reasons why I'm actually not the biggest fan of 3 Gate, 1 Robo, 1 Stargate, trying to do the like the sissy version of the Void Ray Colossus build, is that this mid-game roached Hydra timing gives me a lot of trouble, and I don't really like it. That's why I like new Gateway units. But of course it looks like Cruncher. He's pretty experienced. He ends up pulling back into a little crevice, getting a pretty good arc. I mean, notice how subtle the difference is between engaging with your army here versus engaging with it here. Just a few extra steps, but we're clearly seeing the advantage of using this geyser in our force field arc. Yep, see, there's the geyser helping out in the arc, and hey, it looks like one Cruncher managing to take that out. Let's relate this back to last game. We would mark that as a nice little blunder count, right? It looked like one Cruncher was trying to take this expansion anyways. Okay, that's great, but I would happily mark that under with my little blunder meter, that we did manage to kill off a big attack. If we killed off, say, another big attack, or killed an expansion, we might feel motivated to attack. Cruncher's moving up here to this watchtower. This is not actually an attack a lot of the time, because he's leading with the Phoenix, so just wanted to steer you clear of that. This is a little scout foray. Like 90% of the time, he's just going to end up pulling back. Looks like he did throw down some pretty good force fields. Pretty cool. But hey, looks like he's beginning to advance. pretty steadily here. This is looking kind of scary. Whoa! It looks like, hey, this is having a little bit more success. Relate this back to your blunder meter, right? You may very well be able to begin to say things like, if he makes 2 blunders early, I can just thrust everything into a 8 gateway push and kill him. Or you can even do little things like, yeah, you know what? If he ever makes a blunder between the 12-minute mark and the 15-minute mark, I can kill him. I can just go. And I don't even have to do anything new or special. And that could very well be what we're seeing right here from one Krancha. I'm always a little leery of this because Zerg will end up doing this stuff where they sprint with like 17 roaches. But, you know, Cruncher, see the fact that he's pulling back right here? This is very much so the reason why I said, yeah, this is generally not an attack. Generally, you see players fall back from this. If we go to the everyone can, we see that there's a lot of roaches that are streaming on down. Are there any under there? Yeah, there's 4 little roaches there. This roach force plus these hydras would give this army a little bit of trouble. We're going to see one Krancha just pull back. So the one thing I like quite a bit about this point in the game, I want you to think about what has been going on for the last, I don't know, say, like 3 to 5 minutes. Cruncher has not really seen anything. There was an attack here, defended, hey, barely worked, dump, and then as he moved up, oh, there's a base here, and he killed it, and then he just pulls right back. And now we're going to see Cruncher plunge back into a world of not knowing. A world of having absolutely no idea what is actually going on. He literally cannot see what his opponent is doing. However, this is where this mystery of timing comes into such effect and why you have good themes in your play. This I would call a second big blunder. I'm actually going to, you could even count the third one as like a big blunder. For me, in my eyes, what I would be thinking as Protoss is I'm going to push back all these overlords, and then I'm going to wait just a minute or two before deciding to put on a little bit more pressure. Because he's made 3 huge flubs. Failed flub here, lost this here, and then made a failed attack here. I'm actually really liking this idea of blunder counter. Blunder counter. Very cool, very cool. And part of the reason why I like this a lot, this idea of counting blunders and then just saying, and if I'm ever at like 3 blunders to no blunders, I attack, is that a lot of times when a player makes a huge push and you defend, it's very easy to go, oh my god, and then try to counterattack immediately, and that ends up losing a lot of people games. Classic example. A Terran runs a bunch of Marine Marauders at a Protoss, loses everything. Protoss grabs everything and attacks, but the Terran built 4 bunkers as an emergency measure to stay alive, and Protoss wasn't able to break it. Darn. So that would mean that your blunder counter in Protoss vs. Terran has to be 2 before you end up doing some sort of big counteroffensive. You can hold off a big attack and then kill off 3 drops. And then, hey, now killing those 3 drops, that was a big blunder on his part. Making that huge first attack and losing everything, that was another blunder on his part. Attack! And then you can begin to shape your play around this. This mindset is especially useful if you are struggling a lot in that bronze to diamond range where you're always kind of a little scared to attack. You always feel in the fear. And then look at this, one Cruncher. Look, he pushed there, he pulled back. I would not be surprised if one Cruncher just hung out for a minute or 2, not very long, maybe waited for another Colossus. But just hung out for a teensy-tiny bit, regrouped, and then made an attack. Why? Because his blunder counter right now is a 3. Again, first in this attack here. Second, he killed off his opponent's third. And the third one was this whole bout that happened here where Overlords and a lot of units were lost. Notice how Cruncher is not scouting. He's not even checking the fringes. I might suggest checking here and briefly checking here. That's never, a terrible idea. But he doesn't need to worry about scouting the main. He doesn't need to worry scouting this area. There's nothing that the Zerg can do because Zerg is just scrambling from behind. And there it is. Cruncher now moving out forward. Hey, that's pretty cool. If we actually look up at the production tab, I want to point this out. This expansion has not actually been down for a very long time. Let me actually just keep hitting the B button. Yep, there it is. If we look up here, this is the hatch production. It finished, just for confirmation. Yep, there's that hatch there. It finished like now. So we see Cruncher maybe 10 seconds later. Yep, it looks like, oh no, I was wrong, 15 seconds later. begins to start moving around with his army, and then 30 seconds later, he makes an attack. So, wow, hitting this expansion when it's only been alive for 30 minutes. This can feel weird in-game because it can feel like you found this expansion and you're like, oh my god, he is a 3-base Zerg. No, he's not. He's a 2-base Zerg that just barely got a 3rd base. Maybe he has like 100 minerals collected from it. Screw him, you got him. And then, of course, moving right on in, easy to breezy. Look at how small this army is for Zerg. Look at this tiny Lulzish army. And of course, the Protoss ends up swinging his way in. Yeah, he's doing a lot of swinging. I would like to note one more thing. Notice the lack of air units anymore in this mix. No more are there huge Void Ray Phoenix mixtures as Cruncher did against Idra. It's more ground army favored. He's more favoring these Colossi. He's getting some air, but wow, look at that. Favoring the gateways over the Stargates because of the map. And hey, look at that. Cruncher kills off the Expo and then just pulls right back home again. Checks for bases, pulling home, doesn't stress too much about it. He's going to continue to engage on his half of the map. Very frickin' damn frickin' cool. Way to be Cruncher, way to be cool dude for having knocked out so many beastly beasts, not just in the PvZ matchup, but in the PV, whatever the hell you're playing matchup. We'll briefly take some questions, wrap it up, then I would like to eat some food that doesn't rhyme, but I don't care. Bum bum. Da-da-dum-bum. Da-dum-bum. Goober G-Man! I love this question. And by the way, Markio, I love your script that grabs questions. That made me so dizzy. I apologize, Goober G-Man. My room is like 85 degrees. I am sweating in this room because these floodlights are mighty, mighty hot. I'm actually going to show you what it looks like when I turn off one. Let's get some mood lighting in here. Oh my god, Goober G-Man. You see, isn't it a lot less friendly? When I turn it off, it looks like a cave. It's great. Goober G-Man asks, "Hey Day 9, with an exclamation point. Love that enthusiasm. You talk a lot about timings. As a high platinum player, do these timings still exist? Or should I adjust my timings due to the wide variety of macro abilities? Or should I use master level timings in order to practice for the long run?" I think this is a very, very important question. To highlight a little bit about what Goober G-Man is saying, there are a lot of platinum level players out there who, for instance, can almost do a build. Like a master level player who does an amazing Colossus push will do his Colossus push at like 10 minutes. But when the platinum player tries to do it, it comes out at like 11 minutes or 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Something like that. What I would note is that you really should try to use some timings. It's important that you use some timings, but don't be ultra stringent about them. Because you might be able to say something like, at the 6-minute mark, that is when a master level player would make a Roach Rush. But I'm in Platinum, so that Roach Rush arrives at the 8-minute mark. What I want you to note, though, is that I want you to note the sort of building transitions that end up happening at a lot of these phases in the game. That if you do the basic structure of Void Ray and then cut some corners and then go for a Colossus and then go for a 4-gate push, which is exactly what we saw in Game 1, that I'd recommend rewatching, which you can get at sc2rep.net. You can just follow that kind of blindly, and the important thing that I want you platinum level players to do is just work on refining it. Write down all the timings where Cole Cruncher does it, and then write down your timings. And if you're slow, you can just be like, all right, cool, I guess I got some practice to do in this particular area. Timing is one area to practice, and it relies heavily on strong mechanics. The one thing that I would say that might be a little hard, so it's fine if you skip that and just focus on refining one style of play. This is the hard thing that you can do, is use the logic of these timings. You know, the way a master level player might say it is, if I defend a Roach Rush that comes at 6 minutes, then I can definitively push at 11 minutes and 20 seconds with 6 Warp Gates and 1 Robo, and I will win 99% of the time because of how impaired he is after that 6-minute Roach Rush blunder. Whoa, that's specific. What you can say as a platinum level player is, if he attacks me early with Roaches, then his economy's kind of bad. So my attack next will be pretty good. I should just wait a little bit. I never said a number, but I used some sort of core logic. So I would love it if you guys implemented the idea of blunder counting and just said something like, whenever he blunders twice, or whenever I do a big win twice, I attack. Or maybe I try to see what it's like when I do 3, or when I do 1, or when I do 5, or something like that. But it's totally okay if you're saying, my timings don't feel that meaningful. Just steal from the best of the best and try to get to where they are. And then those timings will begin to feel more relevant. They might not feel relevant at first because your opponent is just so bad that you can rock his world. So yeah. RDJ107 says a great question, dear Day 9. As the Zerg in this situation, are timings the only answer to scouting these different builds? Are there any other indications of what the Protoss is doing to attack me after going Stargate? There are a number of things to do. First of all, a great indication is counting units, where you can say something like, aha, he made 1 frickin' Void Ray. And that's it. I should probably be scared about somewhat of an earlier attack. You might want to just favor making more roaches. And whatever you end up doing, test, measure. You don't want to be too blind in this, because this is the subtlety. This is what really separates the top players from the top 10 players in the world. Is this where lots of testing, where you're like, he has 1 Void Ray, I guess he can make an attack in 2 minutes? Test, measure, test. And then if you see 5 Phoenixes and 1 Void Ray, you'd be like, oh, I'm under a lot of scary pressure now. But when he had 1 Void Ray, I was worried about an attack in 2 minutes. Now I'm worried about an attack in 6 minutes. And then you have all this time to prepare. That's what I want you to do. Yeah. So that's the one thing, is just counting what you can at the front. Doing a lot of counting. The other really important idea is that you should start to do builds that put pressure back. A really cool build that I see Idra do sometimes is where he goes 2 hatch opening, and then he gets 1 Roach Warren and 1 refinery, 1 gas. And then he makes roaches whenever he has free gas, and the rest of the time he's making drones. So he's constantly having roaches poke and prod at the Protoss's front. He does this on Scrap Station a lot. And by poking and prodding a lot at the front, oh my goodness, Protoss is limited. Or hell, whatever he's ending up going, if he goes for a fast robo, you're going to see an Immortal at the front. If he goes fast Stargate, you're going to see that Void Ray at the front. In other words, you draw his stuff out by putting pressure on him. And likewise, if you say something like, I'm going to go for a Hydralisk drop build. You say something like, I kill builds A, B, and C, but now I only need to worry about builds D, E, and F. And then you can begin to think about how to deal with D, E, and F, and not even worry about A, B, and C. Those are the big ways. One more question, and then I'm gonna eat some dinner. People are asking what it's going to be. It's going to be tacos. It's going to be tacos, because I eat a lot of Mexican. Trying to find where the hell there's a question that is relevant. What do you think about lag, Day 9? I hate it. And I want it to die. I can't wait till we're in the future where I can just teleport next to you. In the middle of the game, smack you right in the face. 0 latency. Bam! Right there. Vicious. Let's see here. Here's a great question by Stelio Cantos. Dear Day 9, in many PvZs where I open Stargate, I have a hard time setting up my 3rd base, even after successful starport harass. When I try, the Zerg hits a timing as all my buildings warp in and I don't have enough units to hold it. What I would suggest in this case is there's this idea of when sometimes delaying things is okay. So, for instance, a usual player who's going for 3 bases really fast, and that's all he's doing. He might have those 3 bases started by the 10-minute mark. And then whenever you're doing another strategy, you kind of have this, I better I better try to get my third base up by the 10-minute mark or the 12-minute mark. If you're having a lot of trouble getting it up when you want, what I suggest is telling yourself you're going to take it later, but that you're going to try to do more damage earlier. That is the key. Instead of trying to get the expansion earlier and earlier, and oh man, maybe if I just do this to defend it or that to defend it, this is really when I want it. Just say, okay, it's 12 minutes, that's when I wanted it. Screw you, 12 minutes. I'm going to do this at 14 minutes, and I'm going to be moving around to harass him the whole time. And just happily mass up an army. You watching Control play this matchup, that guy sits on his ass a lot, correctly. You'll see him move forward and see what the Zerg has, and is like, alright, good. Now that I know he has that, and he pulls right back, and then he wins these games where he pretty much just does that, and then has 4 bases, and then he kills them. It's great. It works out great. A lot of times in Control will definitely attack, but a good percentage he'll just look and go, oh, what's your army? No, I'm not doing that. So that is what I would suggest. Instead of trying to rush for the expo, don't rush. Just relax, chillax, chill. I'm done. Guys, submit your Fun Day Monday and Newbie Tuesday replays to Monday at day9.tv and Tuesday at day9.tv. I have to go. I'm so hungry. So I'm going to turn on this overlay. Ba-bum, ba-da-da-da-da-dum. Dum-da-da-da-dum, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.